One of the questions that always occupies many minds is what turns a human into a murderer. Are murderers born as such, or do their life circumstances and environment lead them to that point? The case we're examining today is from Romania and is about the life and crimes of a man named Ion Rîmaru, who was nicknamed the Vampire of Bucharest. This story precisely shows that a killer can come from a seemingly ordinary family but at the same time be heavily influenced by his surroundings. Today, we're going to talk about two serial killers, a father and a son. If you like this kind of case file, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts for me. When Romania is mentioned, the first thing that probably comes to mind is Transylvania and the legendary character Dracula. It's interesting to know that the killer we're discussing today had the same nickname, the Vampire of Bucharest. Ion Rîmaru's horrible murders occurred between 1970 and 1971. The crimes were so brutal that when he was arrested, everyone with the surname Rîmaru changed their names. Bucharest is the capital of Romania. Officially, only 4 murders are attributed to Ion, but the reality is that he went far beyond these 4 killings. Ion would attack his victims with an axe, dismember their bodies, chew their flesh, cut their veins, drink their blood, and, unfortunately, sexually assault some of them. A few of the victims who survived recounted that Ion would pierce a part of their body and drink the flowing blood directly, something truly terrifying and pathological. Ion's parents had married in the city of Cricău, Romania, and had 3 sons. Ion was the eldest son and was born in October 1946. His parents' marriage was not successful at all, and fights and conflicts at home became normal. They eventually separated. What many didn't know was that Ion's father, Florianu Rîmaru, had committed 4 murders 2 years before Ion was born, in 1944. Interestingly, all those murders happened in the victims' homes, and they all had one thing in common. They were all committed on stormy nights, and the victims all lived on the ground floor. Romanian police were able to find footprints and fingerprints by examining the crime scenes, but they were never able to arrest Florianu. Years later, through more evidence and tests, they were able to figure out who the killer was, but it was already too late. As it turns out, Ion's father, Florianu, was himself a serial killer. Florianu left his wife and children when Ion was very young. This left Ion alone with a set of dark and morbid fantasies. This is where the question arises for many. Did Ion Rîmaru have the potential to become a killer from the very beginning? From childhood, Ion was somewhat on a path of delinquency. He always caused trouble at school, had committed theft multiple times, and his temperament was violent and aggressive. Even while he was still in high school, he had a sexual relationship with an underage girl who was his teacher's daughter. Overall, he was a problematic element at school. Despite all these issues and having repeated 2 academic years, he finally managed to get his diploma with a grade of 5.33 out of 10 and finish high school. With this situation, he decided to continue his studies and entered the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. But from his very first year of university, his behaviors attracted attention. His professors said that Ion was a very withdrawn and strange person, with very limited interests, unable to communicate properly, spoke with difficulty, and had no team spirit at all. His roommates had even worse things to say. They said that Ion would self-harm, cut his body with a razor, and some nights he wouldn't sleep in the dormitory at all. Instead, he would loiter around the girls' dormitory. Everyone tried to keep their distance from him and ignore his presence as much as they could because he gave them a bad feeling. He barely got through his first year of university, but from the second year, things became very difficult for him. He was forced to see a psychiatrist, where the doctor diagnosed him with several mental illnesses. He was prescribed medication, but no one followed up on whether he was taking his pills correctly and regularly. His mental state was not good at all, and this had a direct impact on his studies, to the point that he was forced to retake his second year of university from the beginning. By the second half of 1970, Bucharest was facing a series of strange and horrible crimes. An unknown person would attack women at night using an axe or a bar and also a knife and try to kill them. In just a few months, Rîmaru attacked 16 women and managed to kill 4 of them. The bodies of the victims were in a very horrible state. Some parts of their bodies were torn off. There were deep wounds and holes on their bodies. They were all raped, their veins were cut, and a large amount of their blood seemed to have vanished, with no trace of it left. The police initially had no clue who they were dealing with, but they soon realized it was the work of one person. The attack patterns were also very similar. His targets were always young and solitary women. Another point that was very noticeable in the case was that the killer was very careless. His attacks were unplanned and sloppy. He didn't care about leaving behind evidence or clues. He didn't even care if the victim saw his face. In other words, he wasn't looking for a clean getaway or to hide. It was as if he had only one goal: to attack, abuse, and harm. He didn't care at all about finishing his work completely or not. Rîmaru had become exactly like a predator who would wander the streets for hours at night to find a victim for himself. The result of these atrocities was that the people of Bucharest were absolutely terrified at night. No one dared to go out alone anymore, especially women. A heavy atmosphere of terror and insecurity had spread everywhere. After those attacks, women no longer dared to step out of their homes after 9 p.m. The entire city of Bucharest had a strange vibe. The police also didn't provide much detailed information to the public, which caused people to start spreading rumors themselves. One person would say the killer was a vampire who roamed at night to suck women's blood. Another would say a werewolf was involved, and in short, everyone was saying something different. The city was full of fear and anxiety, and this situation continued for a few months until the police finally found an important clue and got to Rîmaru. It's interesting to know what that clue was: a medical prescription. The story goes that on March 4, 1971, Ion had gone to the university hospital to see a doctor. The doctor had diagnosed that Ion likely had epilepsy, had prescribed him medication, and had given him the prescription. But what Ion himself didn't know was that the very same prescription would become a document that would one day prove he was the killer. Ion foolishly left that prescription at the scene of one of the murders. When the police found the prescription, they realized it belonged to the Bucharest University Hospital and was an official medical prescription, but the patient's name was not written on it. Next to the prescription, the police were able to find a few strands of hair between the fingers of one of the victims. The victim had probably managed to struggle with him at the last moment and pull out his hair. So now the police had 3 main clues: a medical prescription, suspicious hairs, and a few surviving victims who could identify the killer. With all this evidence, the police prepared a list of suspects, 2,500 people. On this long list, Rîmaru's name was also included. The police began to investigate these individuals one by one. Many of them were quickly eliminated from the list, but some remained. One of the people the police put under surveillance was Ion. They noticed that he would leave the dormitory at night and had suspicious comings and goings. One day when Ion had gone to the university, the police took the opportunity to enter his room. There, in his closet, they found an axe and a knife. This led to Rîmaru being arrested as the main suspect in the Bucharest serial killings. When they checked his medical records, they saw that, yes, the prescription belonged to him. There were also scars and bite marks on his body that matched the medical reports of the victims. And the hairs that were found between the fingers of the victim also matched Ion's hair. There was no longer any doubt. Rîmaru was the serial killer of Bucharest. But when he was arrested, a strange story began. In the interrogation room, he kept his mouth tightly shut and didn't say a single word. He would just sit silently, staring into the eyes of the interrogators and showing no reaction. It was as if he wasn't accused of several brutal murders. The police were sure he was the killer, but they needed more details to complete the case. For this reason, they decided to make a clever move. They sent an undercover police officer to Ion's cell. The officer pretended to be a professional thief and began telling fake stories of his burglaries. This caused Ion to warm up. He gradually got closer to him and he also started to talk. Ion began to confess in full detail about the murders, rapes, and tortures he had committed. Everything the police needed came out of his own mouth. Ultimately, with the confessions that Ion had made in prison, the police were able to convict him of more than 20 crimes, several of which were first-degree murders. But one of the most important questions the court was grappling with was whether Ion Rîmaru was mentally sane or not. That is, did he truly understand that what he was doing was wrong, or did he have no grasp of murder and crime because he was insane? As you might guess, Ion claimed in court that he had committed the murders due to mental illnesses. But the court, with the help of psychiatrists and the testimonies of the victims who had survived, came to an important conclusion. Ion knew perfectly well that what he was doing was wrong, meaning he was clearly aware that murder is a crime, but despite this, he would still kill people in the worst possible way. Ultimately, the final verdict was announced: execution by firing squad. Ion appealed several times, but the sentence did not change. Until finally, on October 23, 1971, Ion was forcefully taken to the execution site. He was tied with a rope to a wooden pole, and several officers stood opposite him with guns. Before his death, Ion started pulling at his clothes and shouted that he wanted his father to be there and see his death scene. The last sentence he said was, "The only one who is truly to blame is my father," and then the sound of the shots ended. Ion Rîmaru was buried in an unmarked grave in the Bucharest cemetery, but this was not the end of the story. Until that moment, Ion's father, Florianu Rîmaru, was still alive and no one had arrested him. But exactly 1 year after his son's execution, Florianu threw himself in front of a moving train and was killed. Although some sources in Romania claimed that police officers might have pushed him under the tracks, it was most likely a suicide. And now the even stranger part of the story. After Florianu's death, a forensic doctor, by comparing shoe size, height, fingerprints, and a series of physical signs, realized that the serial killer of the 40s who had never been arrested was none other than Florianu Rîmaru himself. Yes, the father of a killer was a serial killer, and the son was another serial killer. It's truly strange and terrifying. Father and son from 2 different generations, with similar methods, both brutally killed people. There are also some theories that say Florianu taught Ion this style of crime. But on the other hand, some say Florianu had left home when Ion was a child and lived in a different city altogether. So it's truly unknown whether that strange similarity between father and son came from genes or fate, or perhaps both. But what is certain is that the outcome was very painful. 4 people were victimized in the 40s, and a veterinary student turned into a monster. It was here, in prison, when Ion was confessing to his cellmate who was actually an undercover police officer. He said, "I hit another woman. I shot her several times. Then I dragged her into an abandoned house. I sat her on the concrete floor, tore her clothes with a knife, and raped her. In that very moment, I tore off her breast with my teeth." And now a crucial question remains for all of us. Is a killer born with a killer nature, or does their environment turn them into a monster? What are the things that cause a human to step out of humanity like this?